host for today. Okay, I will also briefly introduce our organization. So RDI Urban Refugee Research Group, or we mention it as RDI UREF, is a part of Resilience Development Initiative, an independent research organization focusing on resilience and development. RDI UREF aims to increase awareness, knowledge, and public discourse on forced displacement and how the issue contribute to affect urban development. Today's talk will be conducted approximately within 2 hours of duration, but we can be flexible about it. And we will start with brief film introductions from our amazing directors, Bapak Alfred Peck and Bapak Ali Reza Yawari. And following up, we will have a Q&A session led by our moderator today, Ibu Anak Agung Istri Diah Tricesaria. And after that, we will have the final remarks from our directors and do the closing. And to introduce our moderator today, who will lead you through the talk show, let me present to you Ibu Anak Agung Istri Diah Tricesaria, or maybe let me just call her Mbak Didi. Mbak Didi is a recipient of the Herb Faith Scholarship from Monash Herb Faith Indonesian Engagement Center, who is focusing her PhD research on the experience of refugee women in a precarious livelihood. Previously, she worked with JRS Indonesia and Host International. Okay, I don't want to delay our discussion a lot longer, so let me present you Mbak Didi. Mbak Didi, the floor is yours. Mbak Didi, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you. I'm so sorry about my Wi-Fi connection suddenly stopped working.
It's okay.
Anyway, so we can start, Tessa?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mbak.
Okay. All right. First of all, thank you everyone for those who have joined us in the sessions of Director's Talk featuring Alfred Peck, the director of Freedom Street, and Ali Reza Yawari, the director of The Companion. My name is Diah Tricesaria, and I will be the moderator for the session for the next 2 hours. So as you guys can see, the language used in the sessions will be in English, but throughout the sessions, if you have any questions you wish to ask to the directors, you can send it via chat box in Bahasa Indonesia or in English. But if you send it in Bahasa Indonesia, we will try our best to translate it and answer it in the language that the speaker is most comfortable with. Or you can also wait until our questions and answer session. I'd like to start these discussions by inviting our two directors, Alfred Peck and Ali Reza Yawari, to join us for a short introduction. I'd like to give the first chance to Alfred Peck, the director of Freedom Street documentary, who explores the plight of three refugees, Joniat Asfak and Aziza, with the background of Makassar, South Sulawesi, and how Australia's cruel border protection has affected their life while in transit. So Alfred, can you please introduce yourself, a bit about yourself and where you are right now?
Oh, sorry, Mbak Didi and Pak Alfred, can we hold this discussion for a while? It seems like the live stream in YouTube having some kind of trouble. So
Sure.
until Febri gives us the clue, we can continue that. Maybe
Sure.
maybe you can start like introducing Pak Alfred lagi ya, Mbak.
Oke, cool.
Oke.
Kalau udah siap, ya.
Ya.
Minta
maaf ya, udah saya coba, tapi nggak di preview saya muncul, tapi di ininya, di URL-nya nggak muncul. Jadi
URL-nya apa?
Maaf, ini
kirim biar mulai, saya juga mau lihat. Oke. Oh. Waiting for RDI. Oh, bentar. Itu settingnya jam berapa?
Settingnya harusnya udah mulai, Mas.
Tapi di situ, tapi soalnya di
Iya, di sini di URL-nya masih waiting. Harusnya udah ini apa? Udah bisa ditonton.
ya sih.
Nah, kalau sama saya udah masuk sih. Maaf
Masuk
ya,
ya.
maaf. Iya, udah masuk.
Ya nggak apa-apa. Ini soalnya, oh mungkin waktunya disesuaikan ya, soalnya ini ditulis di tempat aku tulisannya jam 6.15
Jam
sore.
jam 6.15 di sini 3.15. Coba saya 3.30.
Nih aku itu bagi dulu share, itu bagi dulu streaming. Kelihatan nggak? Kelihatan nggak sekarang?
Iya, ini kelihatan sekarang.
Tuh. Ini jam 6.15.
Berarti jam 3 waktu Jakarta kan, Mas?
Seharusnya.
Iya. Maaf ya bentar. Ini tuh udah harus mulai sebenarnya. Karena yang sama saya, coba saya izin share screen ya. Minta
Ya
maaf.
boleh.
Nah, ini tuh udah muncul, udah jalan dari tadi.
Oh, coba coba aku refresh lagi.
Iya. Apa
Oh belum kelihatan.
masukin atau saya buat ini link baru aja ya? Kayaknya link ini bermasalah. Minta maaf, nanti diinin aja. Kemudian mungkin yang udah di dalam ini, di dalam ruangan, karena ada 2 yang masuk, nggak apa-apa kita biarin aja biar lebih ini. Saya ganti custom live streamingnya dulu ya. Minta maaf Mas dan Mbak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Director Talks by RDI UREF. This discussion is conducted as a part of series of events under the theme of Let's Walk My Journey. Let's Walk My Journey art exhibition is supported by Royal Academy of Engineering and partnering with Work Coffee as well as SMART. This exhibition aims to support the meaningful participation of asylum seekers and refugees through art. But before we start our discussion, let me introduce myself. My name is Teresa, a part of RDI UREF, and I will be your host for today. I will also briefly introduce our organization. So RDI Urban Refugee Research Group, or RDI UREF, is a part of Resilience Development Initiative, an independent research organization focusing on resilience and development. RDI UREF aims to increase awareness, knowledge, and public discourse on forced displacement and how the issue contributes to affect urban development. Today's talk will be conducted approximately within 2 hours of duration, and we will start with a brief full introductions from our amazing directors, Bapak Alfred Beck and Bapak Ali Reza Yawari. Following up, we will have Q&A session led by our moderator today, Ibu Anak Agung Istri Diah Tricesaria. And after that, we will also have final remarks from them and to the closing. To introduce our moderator today, who will lead you through the talk show, let me present you Ibu Anak Agung Istri Diah, Istri Diah Tricesaria, or Mbak Didi. So she is the recipient of the Herb Faith Scholarship from Monash Herb Faith Indonesian Engagement Center, who is focusing her PhD research on the experience of refugee women in precarious livelihood. Previously, she worked with JRS Indonesia and Host International. Okay, so let's start our discussion for today, and let me present you Mbak Didi. Mbak Didi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tessa, for the introduction. Thank you to everyone who have joined us in the sessions of Director Talks featuring Alfred Peck, the Director of Freedom Street, and also Ali Reza Yawari, the Director of The Companion. My name is Diah Tricesaria, and I will be your moderator for the next 2 hours. The language used in the session would be English, but if you have any questions you wish to ask the director in the next 2 hours, I guess you can send it via RDI UREF YouTube channel. Feel free to leave the questions in Bahasa Indonesia or English, and then we will try to answer it in the language that the speaker is most comfortable with. I'd like to start these discussions by inviting our 2 directors, Alfred Peck and Ali Reza Yawari, to join us for a short introduction. First of all, Alfred Peck, the director of Freedom Street documentary, who explores the plights of 3 refugees, Joniat, Asfat, and Aziza, with the background of Makassar, South Sulawesi, and how Australia's cruel border protection has affected their life in transit. Alfred, can you please introduce yourself, a bit about yourself, and where you are right now?
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me very clearly? Excellent. So my name is Alfred Peck. I am currently based in Sydney, Australia. I'm an Australian citizen, but I'm actually an immigrant from Indonesia. I immigrated to Australia in 2007. I moved here just as the start of year 7 or SMP 1 back in Indonesia. And I pursued a media degree whilst I was at university. And then afterwards, I also stumbled upon the world of refugee advocacy that Australia has to fight for the rights of those who are indefinitely detained that came by boat. And little did I know that when I first discovered this topic, almost all of the boats actually departed from Indonesia, which is where most of us are from or are based in at the moment. And this is a revelation for me. So eventually, later on, I discovered that the issues a bit more in depth, especially from the Indonesian perspective. And as I began to learn more about the situation, I decided to take upon this project and look for support. That didn't turn out too well, but either way, at the end of the day, the film is finally completed, and finally, a lot of Australians are now learning about the full context of this entire situation, because suddenly there's a lot of things that Australians themselves and also Indonesians themselves don't realize, the important connection that both countries have in terms of managing its refugee migration in the region. So this is the film that will reveal the history. So that's a little bit about me and why I made this film. So thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. We'll dive into your experience in engaging with refugees issues in Indonesia while you are actually in Australia a little bit later on. I'd like to move to Ali Reza Yawari now, who directed The Companion, a story about a young Afghan refugee who lives in waiting for resettlement to a third country. This documentary also taking place in Makassar, and it delves into the resiliency of a young Afghan who, despite all the hardship and disappointing moments, does not give up on his passion as an athlete. And he also finds friendship with the locals. So Ali Reza, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how long have you been staying in Indonesia?
So, all right. Can you hear me clear? Okay. My name is Ali Reza Yawari. Just to make it short, call me Ali during the talk. I'm from Afghanistan. I'm a Hazara refugee who has come here to Indonesia in 2014 at a very young age. I'm a self-learned writer and filmmaker. I started to make movies about the issues of human trafficking, migration, and especially the focus on refugees in Indonesia. I'm also based in Makassar right now, and this film is depicting the story of a friend of mine who is an athlete, taekwondo athlete, which is going through many challenges. So we will talk further about the issues, the problems, and the challenges this person in the film is facing. But this is only one of these stories. We have thousands of stories about the forgotten refugees in Indonesia.
Thank you, Ali. All right, so we'll just start off right away. I will pitch in some prepared questions for both of the directors around various topics in relations to your documentary movies. And while we move on with our session, I'd like to also remind the participant, if you have any question, please leave the questions in RDI UREF YouTube channel, and then during the question and answer session, we will try to answer all of those questions. All right, to start off, I'd like to ask both Alfred and Ali. So maybe to Alfred first, and then after that, we'll move to Ali. So Alfred, when you first realized about the fact that there are boats departing from Indonesia, when did that happen, and why do you choose film as a medium of your storytelling?
Well, when I first realized it, I was actually learning about the idea that there are people seeking asylum to Australia at all. I always thought that people come here basically arrive by plane. You know, it's almost inconceivable to realize that there are people that can actually just come to Australia's shores, essentially. And when I first basically realized that there are people that came by boat to Australia, I was just shocked, because that's something that I never thought could happen, because it's not really a concept from Indonesia that I grew up with. Just like that, frankly speaking, it's so foreign. But then to learn that it's actually from Indonesia that these people are departing from, and they're paying the Indonesian fishermen and using their boats, that's even more shocking. I was at university and I was trying to basically find like a topic that is humanitarian that will look good on my media resume to cover, you know, just for my career and, you know, for portfolio. I didn't expect to learn so much of this topic, and I didn't expect to basically delve into it. So basically, I didn't come to making a film about this topic right away. I didn't actually absorb and learn about all of this quite a few years before I made the decision to do that. And this is because I was very young when I first discovered this topic, when I was 20 and the age of 21. I was just learning about the concept, like, what is a refugee? What is asylum seekers? I have no idea what those things were before. And also, I just never think about I just never thought that someone could be in that situation before. And basically turn up to Australia's shores, especially from our country. But ultimately, after many years of learning that, after building a lot of refugee advocacy networks in Australia, I began to gain more confidence, and I began to finally notice something that wasn't noticed by a lot of these Australians, and that is actually to this whole situation, as to why there are people now stuck in indefinite limbo in Indonesia, because there are direct Australian policies that created these consequences. And I did not realize that my tax money is somehow being used towards this issue, to basically detain people in previously in detention centers, now now being used by IOM and other NGOs in the country, in Indonesia, and basically incentivize Indonesia to basically create the political situation that these people face. And as both someone who is Australian and Indonesian, and again, a lot of the Australians are blinded by the situation. They just couldn't, they just never had the background and the context to connect the dots. So when I realized that actually no one else will be able to do this, I have to step up, because at the end of the day, if no one else will, if who will, you know? And yeah, that's how I made the decision to create my film. But the reason why I specifically chose films, because it is the most accessible medium to everyone, even for those who cannot read or write, as long as they're able to listen, that is. If they're deaf, that's a little bit of an issue, but if they can listen and orally understand what's being communicated, then it's just the most pervasive and the most natural way of communication for a lot of people, whether it's through in-person oral traditions or through a medium like films. So, and that's why I decided to do this. But one thing that makes this film a little bit different from your typical refugee stories is the inclusion of a lot of the experts that I interviewed to fully contextualize the situation. Because so far, no films in Australia have done this before. And no one in Indonesia has done this before. I guess I'm covering both countries in this regard. So yeah, here I am. And if anybody is wondering, I do speak Bahasa Indonesia very fluently. It is my native language. So if you do have Indonesian-based questions, I'm more than happy to answer them in Bahasa Indonesia if you guys don't understand much of the English language. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. I've watched Alfred documentary movie Freedom Street a few times actually. I'm doing my PhD right now in Monash University at the moment. So what Alfred done with the movie is very unique because it tries to capture what happens globally and regionally, and how does that policy affect the individual's life that is portrayed in the movies. So sometimes we never questions like, oh, there are refugees here in Indonesia, and what we only know is because there are war in their home countries. But how come they stuck in Indonesia for so long? We forgot, like we miss somehow that there are external factors affecting to their life. And I think Alfred's documentary movie Freedom Street really gave like a very extensive explanations about that. And I do really agree because movie is one of the most accessible media for everyone. So hopefully with your movies, a lot more people will have the awareness that there are this regional challenge that not only one actor or one country have to address, but it's something that everyone needs to be aware in order actions to happen. Right. Thanks, Alfred. So next one, I'd like to ask Ali. So Ali, you mentioned you arrived in Indonesia on 2014 at a very young age.
Yes.
Can you let us know how old you are at that time? And how come you choose film as the media to share one of the stories? Because you mentioned there are a lot of refugee stories, but you picked this one and you decided, I'm going to tell the story using film.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Previously mentioned about I was very young when I came here. I was 15 in 2014 when I came here with lack of a lot of experiences. I have got no idea of where this place is, what am I doing here, and so many other questions in my mind. I was trapped to live in here. I lived and lived and lived in detention center and the war situation that you can imagine. And I'm here now. Through this time, I have learned a lot from the situation of my own living, from the decisions others have made for me to live in such a situation. And that is the worst thing, that I had no possibility of making any decision in my life for myself to bring any change. And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. There has come a time that I had to accept the situation, and I had to go to, okay, I have to empower myself because there is no opportunity at all. I started to learn and learn and learn and it has started from learning about my surrounding, about the situation in here. Who are they and what are they doing to us? And a lot of questions came to my mind. And where are the answers? I was thinking about how to find the answers. And I found like, okay, that is the best if I can ask people about their story to see and to match like how these stories are the same and different. And there are many similarities in terms of being detained. And there are many differences in how people pass their time of detention. And this detention is never ending until now. We have shared a lot of stories, and I was always thinking like, we can only share these stories to each other in our tiny rooms and the detention centers. But then there should be people who know about, there should be people in Indonesia, outside Indonesia, should know that, okay, there are people existing from, people call it foreigners or foreigner refugees or asylum seekers in Indonesia, but where they live is not existing in the city. Where are they living now? They're living in a corner of the town, in a detention center. They call it IDC, but it has different names for different organizations or for different people, different interpretations about. This is a prison. So I was thinking like how this information, how these all stories should be delivered to other people, because once we convey our message, once we convey our stories to other people, people come to know, and the information and the awareness will be raised. So I was thinking like, what is the best way? And I found out that one of the best ways can be film, can be short films, can be sometimes pictures. As Alfred mentioned, this is very much accessible to everybody, and people can easily get the opportunity to listen to us. And then I started to make films, to take photographs, to go to my friends, ask about their stories, make short films, and then that's the only thing we can do. And now I have made several short movies, short films about different issues of refugees. This one is the longest one, 1 hour. This has been a very much challenge for me. I'm being a refugee and doing that is quite different. I'll explain about why and how. But again, it's one of these stories, as I said. We go through the detail of this story. There are many things being depicted in the film. Many of them, obviously, many of them is not obvious, but should be talked about because of, you know, many risks and challenges is still out there for me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ali. What I really like about these two movies is I'm studying here, and I read a lot of this story from articles, like academic articles, right? But then again, who reads the academic articles if not students, right? So the audience of this academic article is very limited. But the things that both of you are able to do is to visualize the story that this researcher get in a more accessible and popular media, which is movie. So anyone can watch it, like Alfred said, anyone who can hear, as long as they can hear, and if they can see too, they can enjoy the visualizations of this information, like really precious information. So yeah, I have such a, how do you say, like I'm fangirling about with the works of you two right now, because being aware that even though I'm a researcher, like I cannot do the things that you guys, both of you can do, and you could reach more audience by using movies. That's really great. So we have questions from YouTube, from YouTube channel, but I'm going to keep that questions at the end of our discussions, because it's a really good questions, but I like to keep it at after both of you share your experience on making this movie. Okay, so the next questions. How did both of you chose the story and of this specific individual? So like, how did you come into decisions like, I'm going to use this character in Alfred, those three characters, individuals, and then Ali, you chose like one particular individuals, which is Sajadi, who's an athlete, and then makes friends. So how did you come into the process of, right, this is it. This is the story that I want to tell. This is the story that I want to work with. And this is the important message that I want to tell through the movies. Maybe Alfred can go first.
All right, thank you guys. So basically, I made a call out to anyone in Makassar. So first of all, I chose the city of Makassar because a lot of the refugee stories that are, I guess, coming out of Indonesia are based in Java, maybe like one or two from Medan. So Makassar is another very, very big refugee population center in Indonesia that doesn't get a lot of visibility. So I made a conscious decision to highlight a place that's less visible to, you know, people's consciousness. This is a very big city with a lot of people in it, but there's also a large refugee population. I think it was 2,000 people when I visited. I think it's less now, but basically I made a call out and we ended up with the 3 people because they were the bravest one who decided and agreed to be part of this film. This is actually, it's not that I chose, the only conscious decision that I make in this film is to have at least one women's perspective. And that's how we ended up with Aziza. I just didn't know it was going to be really, really eye-opening because I never, ever, ever encounter someone that is as sad as her situation in my life. And understanding and having experienced poverty in Indonesia before migrating to Australia, I thought I know what it means to deal with a lot of like third world challenges. I was wrong because truly there are people that are much worse than any of us have ever experienced anything in their lives. And so, yeah, these people were selected because they were the bravest one. And I specifically didn't make a huge call out because if there's a really big call out for this film, for this kind of documentary, there's a certain risk associated with having this known to some organizations there, some government or non-government organizations there. And then also maybe there's a little bit of a community concern, you know, oh, who is this foreigner? Who is this person that's trying to open up this sort of journalism story, you know, in our community? Who is this person? Sure, I might look Asian. Heck, I was mistaken as a Hazara when I was over there. I'm so confused. I was like, why do I look like a Hazara in Makassar? Never thought like I would ever be in that situation in my life, but essentially, I was just, I don't know, it was just, I had to be very low key when I first started this project because there's just so many unknowns. And obviously I couldn't go to some of them jail detention centers. So again, I have to smuggle those things. But ultimately, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, and the 3 people in the film, they're the bravest one. And also, I would argue they're some of the most invisible people on the planet because 2 of them are stateless. I don't even understand what a concept of stateless was until I met these people. I literally have no idea that anyone in any part of the world could not have a place to call home at all. I don't understand that before until I truly learn about what that is. It blows my mind. It's still shocking for me to this day. It should not happen. And I can see that even people that has a technically has a passport. I know that these people can't necessarily go back home, but imagine having no home at all to begin with. I don't know. There's just something that we really have to take into consideration when it comes to this topic, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping that I can begin to spark some very important conversations at least in Indonesia for this event. So thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. I'll come back to your statement saying like the bravest one, but we'll keep it for later. We'll just go quickly to Ali Reza. So what happened? How did you decided I'm going to tell a story of Sajadi? And it's very interesting. When I watched your movie this morning, I actually cried because the depth of the story, and I just like, it's just crazy for me. I cannot imagine like what happened in your perspective as the director, and you're refugees yourself, and you're telling the story. I think you're very familiar. So let us know. Like, please share with us.
Yeah, so before going to that part, to that point, I really would want to have Sajadi today here with us. But today is a big day for him. He has a competition in his club. So, but in Makassar, it's a local competition. So we pray and hope the best for his win. Let's see. To take this a chance, I would also like to briefly mention how I met Sajadi first. I was in Kupang for 5 years. I was detained in Kupang. Then I was moved to Makassar in 2019. And the first person I met and who welcomed me warmly was Sajadi. He was very open. He was one of the best guys I've ever met in my life, and he is my best friend. By the time I got to know that he is very talented, he is an athlete, and he is trying his best to make his future based on his passion. He started Taekwondo since his childhood in Iran as a refugee. Then he came to Indonesia when he was 14 years old. And then he couldn't find anywhere to exercise Taekwondo, his passion. He was just like regretting all his time. After some years, he found out there is a club in the area, but then it's only for Indonesians. He is a refugee. He cannot go to the club and start to train Taekwondo. He did try to enroll in the club for several times, but then, you know, the identity issue. People always wonder, like, who is this person? And they ask for the passport. They ask for the KTP. They ask for the ID card. He has none of them. And, you know, for a person who is 14, 15 years old, these questions can not easily be answered. And there is question after question, why I cannot attend a sport, why I should be always in this room and I cannot go out to play with others. Then he grew up a little bit more in age and he tried to figure out some ways. He tried to learn some English and very few words in Bahasa. Then he started to make communication with other people in the area and print studio in Makassar. So if he could get into the club and be enrolled to practice Taekwondo, it is all for his passion and for his being persistent on what he wants to do. There was no support from anyone or from any organization, and he get into the club, introducing himself and just showing his talent. The master of the club just welcomed him and he said, you know, no matter if you have the KTP or not, no matter if you have the passport or not, you can be in, you can train, and we welcome you. This is part of the story that we want to say through this film, that there is always a human connection, even if the governments, even if the authorities, even if those people having their power in their hands want to stop people from connecting. They are building borders, they are building wars, and they are just destroying people's lives. but people will not be stuck. They will find their ways, they will make connection, and this is what Sajadi has done. This was very inspiring for me. We have nothing, we really have nothing. We don't have any documents, we don't have any support, not financially, nor spiritually or mentally. We are not really supported. But then this person at a very young age continued his passion. This is resonating me very much. This is what I have done as well. I have gone through this path in a different way, but then Sajadi as well. Then I was like thinking, okay, I want to make you a film if you agree. And he doubted several times. He was thinking for many times. And I was waiting. And I was every day talking with him. It's important that people know your story, because your story is very unique. Your story is also the same as my story, but in a different way. I cannot do it for myself because, you know, Alfred knows better about the production process. And I need someone to be beside me as well to do it together. After he kind of started to agree with it, then I started to talk seriously about it. That, okay, there are pros, there are cons, there are threats, risks, there are many other things coming after people watch your film. And you should be standing for how your life is. And he agreed. We sit together, write, think, write, delete, censor, and did many things through the process. And here we have the film after more than 10 months. So the film, we will later, of course, talk about the film production process, about many other technical things as well. I would like to take the chance to talk about that. But then about how we started this is like, yeah, the Muhammad Sajadi's story is very inspiring for me, and I see myself on the same. So this is how we started to make the film. And again, to take the chance, let's hope that he wins his competition today.
I wish the very best of luck for Sajadi for his competitions today. Right. Yeah. So, Alfred, I want to go back to you when you say the bravest one. So I guess it's not very easy to get this three to come up, to step up before you. Like, what are the challenges for you? Because you're not part of the community, right? Technically speaking, whereas Ali is part of the community, so the communications is a lot easier, I would say. But like for you, as someone who is outside of the community and you want to capture the story, and you say these are the three bravest individuals who finally, you know, step up. All right, I'll share the story. What are the challenges for you to reach to that point?
Surprisingly, not language. First of all, most of these people can actually now speak Indonesian. So that's the first thing I have to acknowledge. I said most, there are some who still don't, but most are fluent now. So that's not the challenge. How I actually get to discover these three people is through Australian refugee advocates that are already connected to some of the refugees that are in Indonesia. So as I am part of the Refugee Advocates Network in Australia, it wasn't too difficult to find one with like really good connections and and also building and it's not too difficult to build relationships from there because they have an awareness that, oh, there are foreigners, there are Australians that care about this issue as well. They're just not in large numbers, right? Because most of the Australians are focusing on getting people outside, getting people out of their own like offshore detention centers that's not in Indonesia. And then there are Australians that are trying to help those that are already in the community but not receiving permanent protection visa for refugees because they came by boat. So there's discrimination that's happening. And when I first made a call out to the people that I initially contacted, it was literally through the word of mouth. I was being passed around to all the different people in the community. I just happened to have these people that have agreed to offer what's happening. But one of the biggest challenge I would say was to prove who I was, because I'm not a bule. So I don't actually look like a typical what Indonesians or what even typically considered a foreigner. I do look very Asian. So I am, I guess, considered in that regard. So when the first image that when they hear someone from Australia is a white person, right? I'm not white. So I'm actually very Asian. And when they discovered that I was actually also Indonesian, it also confused them a bit more, because what? How? Okay, so I guess someone who is Australian and Indonesian exists in this world. Okay, that care about the issue. So it was interesting because it was, yeah, I guess a lot of very confusing experience to begin with. A lot of people were a bit shy because who am I? Like, I've done video journalism before, but it's not like I can simply show like my video portfolio and people will be like, oh, okay. Because I've been an independent video journalist before. I've worked for small media companies in Sydney, and it wasn't like a big broadcaster. Like, I wasn't funded by these organizations. I was truly an independent filmmaker. I'll come back to my filmmaking experiences as well later on. But yeah, it was literally through a building of trust. The key, once I have people who warmed up to the idea, I try to offer them as much of assurance as possible. And I try to build the relationships first, because I'm in Australia. These people are in Makassar. The only way was to chat and call them. Thank goodness we live in the age of internet, because none of this would have been possible. So there's something to appreciate. And also I had to basically show more proactive efforts in terms of giving these people incentives. They're not just looking for money. They're looking for an opportunity to get their voice out there and possibly find a path for resettlement, because some of these people, they don't care about being, they don't, I mean, most of these people, they don't really care about having money at this point. They just want certainty in their future. That's something that I can 100% understand, because again, I'm from Indonesia. There is we know what it's like to not have a stable future, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to migrate to Australia, right? We were very lucky, but at the same time, it's at the same time, I guess the challenge is also about how do I then maintain that relationship? How do I then empower these people? So that's another thing about, I think, giving them assurance, because if it's just me and what I do, and listening to the experiences that these people have, having journalists visiting them and then basically abandoning them afterwards, that's really sad. So I make sure that I build my network in Australia and around the world, to make sure that these people are then connected and supported through more international coalition from my network, as a way of empowering them. And sadly, I can only focus on these 3 people because, like Ali said, there's so many people in Indonesia with a lot of these really unique stories, but we all have our capacity. And as someone who practically have to self-fund this film mostly, that's pretty much my only capacity. So, it is what it is, and I've been very lucky to be in this position. I'm really sad that I couldn't help more people, but even these 3 people that I help, it's probably a very difficult journey for myself, because it was just eye-opening. Once again, I have to emphasize that, I have to remind people that again, once you truly understand the struggles, once you truly understand also the context of why these struggles exist, it's a shift in consciousness, essentially. And this is something that we have to start, recreating and producing more and more. So it is what it is. I'm not sure if I went for too long, but hopefully there was some very important words and ideas being conveyed. So thank you.
Well, what I really like about documentary movie is it often, like what Alfred said, sparks conversations, right? Sparks curiosity, not only to the story but the story of the character portrays in the movie, but also the story of the directors. Because like, how come the directors is interested in this story? So when Alfred movies Freedom Street was first, screened publicly, and then I shared the news also to my friends. A lot of my friends asked me, so who is Alfred? Like, how come did he come upon this topic? So, and this is for Ali, once your movie finish screened by the 20th of August, or maybe you will screen it somewhere else, it will spark curiosity on your story too, and on your journey, on why you chose to make this movie. So this is just the beginning. And so it is really interesting because I've seen Alfred journeys, and then now you, Ali, will also probably experience maybe similar things, maybe some things are different, but yeah. Anyway, the next question. So it's a very, I don't know, it's kind of difficult, but when you make this movie, you must have a key message that you want to tell your audience. I don't know, maybe the audience from Indonesia, maybe audience from your own community, from refugee community itself, or maybe audience from Australia. So if you can let us know, like, what are the key messages that you want to tell to your audience, and how do you connect that with the kind of discussions or policy or changes that you wish to happen in the context of refugees' condition in Indonesia. So again, maybe this time I go to Ali first.
Okay, sure. That's actually a good question. For people who have watched the film, they might see a lot of messages being delivered to different people. It's not only the refugee community, it's not only the Indonesian host community. It's involving all people who are watching, even if that person is sitting in another continent of the earth. So let's go through these thoughts, and we will just bullet point and make them bold for some of the points. The main is about the identity, and that identity will bring a lot of things, which the most important one is the freedom. If someone is having an identity and people know him or her based on that identity, there is coming next the freedom. We don't have that. The refugees in Indonesia don't have that. People don't know who these people are. We are so much time being misunderstood, or people do not really well understand who these people are and what they are doing. So part of the film that is mentioning about who are the refugees in Indonesia, where they're coming from, and how long or why they are staying here. Going to next parts is showing one of the refugees, Sajadi, is trying his best to stay alive as well as live in such a situation in Indonesia, where everything is like a shut door for us, the refugees. We open, it's not getting opened. We try. Then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, it's not possible. There are a lot of moments that we do try our best to make something happen, but it fails. It fails not because we are not trying enough. It fails only because it is kind of stuck there because of an identity issue, because of a document issue, because of a decision that is made someone else for us. Then I was thinking like, what can the Indonesian community do? Then I was like, okay, this is the real story. Why not depicting that? Why not people know about how Sajjadi entered the club and continued to train while living in limbo, while living in a lot of uncertainty? Then let's depict it and let people that if you are a local citizen of Indonesia and you are living next to refugees who are in detention, you still can be doing something to them. And that is like, this person has opened the door of the club for Sajjadi to enter and spend his time with practicing Taekwondo. That is his passion. Like this, a lot of other Indonesians can make this terrible life a little bit easier for refugees in Indonesia. We lack a lot of things. We cannot buy a SIM card, we cannot travel, we cannot be on our own. Our accommodation doors will be closed at 10 o'clock at night. You know, a lot of problems and challenges. But then this process of living can be a little bit easier when some people are understanding the situation and trying to give a hand. This is the part of this story. Other part is people should understand that if someone like Muhammad Sajjadi, or if someone like Ali, or if someone as a refugee in Indonesia is trying the best to do something, we are stuck here for 10 years and more. We cannot only eat and sleep. We have to do something. Our minds should work, our body should work. We do something. But then when it is time to prove it, just like Muhammad is going for a competition in the film to another city, he is being stopped of going there. It is affecting his mental situation. It is destroying all his life's hope at the moment. And just he says like, okay, I cannot do it. It's only because people design the system. Okay, we put people in prison and we don't let them go, no matter what reason. That person cannot go attend a competition together with his companions who he trained with a lot to do their best in the competition. But she could go because she is an Indonesian citizen, but Muhammad could not go because he is a refugee and doesn't have the document. And people do not know him if he doesn't have the document. That's part of this story. So, you know, there are a lot of messages for people and what perspective and what level of information they have from refugees, from the Indonesian context of refugees, which can be having some impression on those who can make this process easier. Why someone at a very young age coming to Indonesia being stuck for 10 years or more than that, and there is no hope for the resettlement to another country that they can give better opportunities, document, freedom, and everything someone needs. Why should that person is still not be able to use the time while waiting? 10 years is a very, very long lifetime. But then people cannot make use of their time. Muhammad fails this time. In the film, he couldn't go to the competition, but then he didn't stop. He kept the spirit, as the companion told Muhammad. He kept the spirit, and today that I'm talking with you in here, he's having another competition, but in a local base. So he's not giving up. He's continuing, but who knows? He may tomorrow give up, because this is breaking his spirit 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, when the system is just putting the pressure too much on him. And this is the story of Muhammad. This is the story of 13,000 refugees in Indonesia.
Thank you, Ali. What really caught my attention is in the movie, when Sajadi cannot participate because he doesn't have a national ID card. And he said, well, I have an ID card, but it's a refugee card and it doesn't, this is my ID card. But then the tournament competition say, well, that's not the ID card that we want. It was really heartbreaking because for me as Indonesian, I often take for granted my ID card and my passport too. So it's like, oh wow, just that small piece of card really changes someone's life in that split second. And the way that Sajadi mentions over there, like it's like I'm not exist because this ID card from refugee from UNHCR, it means nothing here. So that's what caught my emotions at when I watched that. And I was like, wow, things that I take for granted as locals, citizen of Indonesia, means a lot for other people like Sajadi. So yeah, thank you, Ali. Alfred, what about you? Sorry, I accidentally unmute myself. But yeah, you're Australian Indonesian. You have a bit of background in Indonesia, the versions of Indonesia that you know, but you're also in Australia and now you're Australian citizens. So what are the key messages that you want to deliver and what kind of discussion that you wish to spark if I have to borrow what you said previously?
Before I come back to the key message, I actually just want to contextualize something. If you guys haven't noticed with my looks, I'm also Chinese Indonesian, that is for specifically. I didn't learn this until later, but a lot of Chinese Indonesians before 1980, before like the 1980s and even early 90s, they don't actually have Indonesian citizenships, even though they were born in Indonesia. So in a way, my family, my extended family, had a direct experience what it's like to be a foreigner in their own homeland because of our background. I was born much later in a generation where I can gain citizenship, of course, being that. But so that's actually something that's interesting that not even a lot of Indonesians are aware, that even the Indonesians themselves don't actually realize that there are people in their home country that don't get citizenships until much later in their life, or quite recently as well. So that's the first thing that I want Indonesians to know, that hey, we also we actually have a reference in our point of history, and this kind of discrimination have actually existed to the people that have been living here for centuries. Even they just happen to not look Indonesian, but hey, what is this discrimination? So let's first acknowledge that in our history. So that's what I want to first establish. Coming back to my identity and my key message, I suppose I carry a very complex identity. As my background, who was an Indonesian person who don't look very Indonesian, but is actually very Indonesian, but then come to Australia and then become very but then I became an Australian citizen. I suppose it's really time for Indonesia to step it up to, hey, what will the world say, if we don't like expand like what Indonesia is in the global perspective. Yes, I understand that Indonesia have always existed in, in their own little world, and we almost forgotten that we actually don't just live in our own little planet. We actually have people from around the world that we share on this planet Earth. And guess what? There will be people coming and going through our country, right? Whether it is by choice or not. And I think this is where I think Indonesians need to step up to realize that, hey, there are other people that exist in our home country. Let's try and learn who they are, where they come from, and let's actually open that conversations without judgment. Because at the end of the day, there will be experiences that we will not understand. and we will actually have to learn from them. I certainly had my experience doing that before I moved to Australia. Being Australian and having to immigrate to Australia, I have to do the same, but in reverse, obviously, because I have to learn the Australian culture. I have to learn the Australian law. I have to learn how do people here get along? What is their value? But yeah, and as Indonesians living in Australia, we have to adjust to the new life here. And that's just something that I have to do. And likewise, everyone who eventually stays wherever they have to adjust to their local environment. And again, like I said, I'm an immigrant to Australia. I'm very fortunate in this regard. And also I have the opportunity to be accepted in this country. I don't necessarily get immediately accepted being Chinese Indonesian back in the day. I'm not saying now, I'm saying the context before, just because of how I look. But essentially, it is time for Indonesia to wake up, to open their eyes and realize that they don't just live on their own planet. We actually share this planet with everyone else. So that's my main message.
You want to pop the bubbles of Indonesians so that they're aware there are, like, your bubble is not just only Indonesia, there are other peoples also. Thanks, Alfred. All right, so we've got some questions from the YouTube channel. So I'm going to start picking up some of those questions. So let me just check. So there are questions from, there's no name here, but one question's for Ali. Hi, Ali, do you have any challenges making this film as a refugee yourself?
Well, yeah, there have been a lot of challenges. Let me tell you one part of this story. This may not be pleasing for some people who are watching this, especially those people who have been part of this, but it's good to say, not to complain, but to mention how hard it is. It is again relating to that issue of identity. When there's no identity, people cannot trust on us. So I don't have a studio, I don't have a production team, I don't have anything to make this happen, but I'm trying to do that. Part of the process of producing this film, I have talked with, let's say, a film studio for having part of the film as a collaboration. But this had to be short or long, depending on their decision, because one part of the documentary was Muhammad had a very important event that was in the Makassar National Gor. So on that day, a lot of people from different regions of Sulawesi came to Makassar to have the competitions as well as their belt upgrade. So we had to film Muhammad on that day, and we have talked a week before with these people, and we did that. People, we asked them, and they have come. We have done all. We captured all the shots, and that was really good. But you know, after some time, the people disappeared, and they were not answering my calls, my messages, or anything. And I was finding terrible time to find those people. And after a month that I could contact them, they simply said that the memory is lost. We don't have anything to give you. Can you imagine? Alfred, you may realize this better when you put a lot of effort, energy, and time on part of the documentary that is going to happen only once after years. That was very disappointing for me, and more for Muhammad, because he missed that very important part. We don't have it in our film today, but if we could have that, that would be like wonderful. You know, that was very important for Muhammad. That was depicting how Muhammad is going into the local community and doing what he is good at. So that's one of the challenges. You know, part of my film is out of the film because of something happened to this, and that is again related to those people might have expected anything that could be financial, that could be any other benefits, that later on they found out, okay, these people cannot make it happen for us, so why should we have this with them? This is one. Other things, as I mentioned before, we have commuting regulation. We cannot go anywhere that we want. We cannot go at any time that we want. So we have to follow the regulation procedures applied to IUM accommodations by the immigration. That is making it very much harder for me to take the film from the talents of the film. To mention that there are two local people of Muhammad Sajjad's friends. One is the club mate, the other is the friend who accepted to appear in the film. But again, we had to have money arrangements with them, with their families, to go to their homes. We cannot receive them in our accommodations. That is another challenge. So we had to kind of, when we had our shooting and we couldn't bring them in, we had to do it only Muhammad. And you can see that Muhammad is alone in his room and his accommodation, doing other stuff just to show how he is living. But then he is being invited to his friend, to her friend's house, and he is going there. Again, for that, we were afraid and fear of doing that, because, you know, for us to enter our friend's house is also something we are always having it in the back of our mind as a risk, as a fear. You know, there are many things as a simple reason we give to people, and people, I mean, like those in power, to punish us, to stop us. Financial problem is the other big part. Production costs a lot of money. I've done it from my own budget for renting all the equipments that we had to use. We had to do for a lot of other logistic things, which is like, yeah, there have been people helping, but that's not covering all. Other challenges are in terms of the time management, location permission for many locations that we had to, they didn't give the permission to us, again, because I cannot make a contract with them. I cannot convince them that this is for the good purpose, this film. Then I failed, and a lot of things during the process. So this is really complicated, complex, time-taking, and a lot of obstacles and stops are on the way, but finally we could make it. I'm so happy for that. Actually, so we have a lot of logistic problems, we have a lot of resources problems, and then at the end of the film you see that when they when the names appear there, you see a lot of the times only my name. So it's because I had to do all by my own, and I had to be there, you know. So I am very grateful for having Muhammad by my side as well. He also helped me a lot behind the scenes, especially in the edit part and the producing part as well. So we have had these many challenges coming to make it very specific. I hope we will run out of time, but then if there is question, I would like to go deeper into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Do not give up, just like what Muhammad Sajjadi said in the movie, right? Alfred, there's a question for you. I have seen a lot of events about your film, and that's great. How did you make the movie engagement and advocacy as big as now? Any advice for new directors to voice refugee issues? And also, Alfred, can you also like mention about the length of commitment that you put and pour into this movie, because I know the story, but I think you should mention it, like, because it's not just like a 1 year project, right? I know you did this for so many years. You come back and forth, Indonesia, Australia. There's so many resources, you allocate for this movie. So yeah, please tell the story.
Okay. Sorry, can you remind me the first question again? I'll come back to my story. Sorry, the first part of the
The
question.
first question is, how did you make the movie engagement
Oh,
and
yeah, the
advocacy
engagement.
as big as now?
Okay. So, okay, so here's a tip. If you've done a media degree, you will learn a lot about how the media I guess environment works, especially if you learn a little bit about social media and engagement. So that's one. But also being part of the community, being part of the get involved, be part and get to know and network with the people that are on the ground who are actually making the changes, who are actually part of the advocacy movement. What are these people doing? And get involved, help these people. I basically have to do that and learn about the issue before I decided to make this film. And the reason why I do it that way first is because I want to make sure that when I am ready to make this film, I am able to actually have some perspective, have a voice, and understand that there are gaps that I could fulfill by knowing what the challenges are of the community. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to help the movement, any movement for that matter, actually, understand what is the gap, what is the what is it that's missing in a lot of these conversations, and take that and run with it. Because once you understand your own strength, oh, actually, that's another one. Understand your strength as well, because if you don't identify your strength, you can't identify the gap. So understand your strength, and once you understand your strength, identify the gap where you actually then have to, where you can actually run with that. Because if you don't know, then you can't commit. I'll come back to I'll talk about the challenges very soon, about moving back and forth. I actually have a lot of parallel with the experience of Ali, so which was interesting because when I heard Ali's story, I faced very similar issues. But of course, I'm in a much more privileged position than Ali, being an Australian citizen, right? But I guess coming back to the film production, yeah, money was a really big challenge because I guess I'm not in a position of Ali having no identity. I have an Australian passport, but that doesn't mean anything in the film industry here because it's just not a very popular topic to begin with in Australia. So I also then look for support and, hey, maybe like people from the refugee advocacy community, can help realize, hey, maybe they can help produce my films. That's also not the case because the refugee advocacy movement in Australia are already very tight with their money because they're already supporting a lot of people that are trying to survive in Australia because they're discriminated against. And they're also helping people that are currently in the offshore detention centers. And, and of course, to a certain extent in Indonesia. So I quickly learned that there's no support for what I have to do. Just no support. I'm in a much more privileged position, by the way. I earn Australian dollars with my job. And yet I'm also facing the same challenge in a very different way to Ali. It's bizarre. I also have to come back to Indonesia twice to do this film and schedule everything, logistical nightmares, because when I first started as well, I didn't have a lot of budget. I was using all of my own equipment, which I'm fortunate enough to earn and buy. But I quickly learned that the equipments can break along the way. Equipments can also be, playing up. They're just gonna play up for some reason. And you don't truly understand why until you return later on and discover that, oh, maybe there's a technical issue, maybe there's something that should have been replaced. When I really first started filming this in the first year, because I wasn't in a full-time job, I was very struggling in terms of recouping the cost and money, and even bringing the idea to other people. I was very much like Ali, alone in my thoughts and alone in my vision. A lot of the volunteers that actually initially were interested in to be part of this project, they slowly realized how big this project was, and then they just disappear. Like, you know, the best thing that you can do if they want to disappear from your vicinity is to communicate. These people don't communicate, they just disappear. This is really frustrating. And eventually, once I start securing a full-time job, so I have to have a normal job in order to support my bills in Australia, as well as, you know, supporting this film and making this film. Once I secure more income, that's when I can have a lot more, you know, movement in my film. I can hire someone, I can get drone shots, I can get people to pay for it. I can get the most appropriate soundtrack. Oh, by the way, the soundtrack of my film is very Indonesian, which is a very unique aspect of the film that's produced in Australia, because I don't think there's anything like that recently anyway. And also there is the challenge of permissions. I'm an Australian citizen. I thought what people don't realize is that I'm actually coming to a premise, to a venue that's basically full of gray areas, because when I went to the detention centers in Makassar, they're not just going to let any foreigners walk in, right? So an interesting way that how I was able to be smuggled into my friend's room was to be acknowledged as one of the refugees, because for some reason I look like a Hazara. I'm so confused to this day. And also they make some excuses. They use their wordsmiths to actually pretend that, oh, you know, I'm a fellow refugee making a YouTube channel to learn English or something. And I'm like, okay, what a great excuse. Okay. So I was essentially smuggled in, because the caveat of being in my position doing my documentary is that if Indonesian authorities were to catch on to what I'm doing, not only they'll be interested at the very least in why would an Indonesian who's also an Australian be doing something like this, it could lead to some legal gray areas or repercussions that is just completely unknown. And if Australian government was to catch on to this, there will also be in a very interesting, they'll also be very curious about what I'm doing. Not that I'll be persecuted as an Australian citizen, but I don't know. It was just full of gray areas. The only difference between Ali and I is just that I have more resources and I have more privilege as an Australian citizen. But practically speaking, we actually faced a lot of parallel challenges that I never ever thought I would ever have to face in my life. It's really confusing, to be honest. Why would someone as privileged as I am be facing a very similar challenge and situation as Ali, despite having an Australian passport? And that just proves to show that, again, coming back to Indonesia, realizing that, hey, you know that there are other people from other countries that exist around the world. We're no longer an isolate. We're no longer a country that is isolated in our own little corner in the Southeast Asia. You know, in the future, there will be more people moving in between countries. There are more Indonesians than ever now moving in and out of Indonesia. And there are more foreigners now moving in and out of Indonesia than ever. So it's time that we also realize that there are people who are going to be forcibly moved to Indonesia or other regions, or maybe they're transiting here. So that's really what it is. And yeah, there's still a long way to go. And I'm just quite surprised by what Ali has experienced is very much a parallel of what I experienced in a very different way.
Thank you, Alfred. Sadly, we're running out of time. And actually, I still have a lot of questions, but because of time limitations, I need to wrap this up in the next 4 minutes. So I'd like to use this opportunity to, there's one more question from the audience on YouTube, and it's, we talk a lot about challenges, obstacles, and this question's actually asking, what is the best experience coming from two of you in making this movie? Not sure if it's the best, but at least the most memorable experience based on your experience in making this movie. And please use that opportunity of sharing your most memorable experience as your closing remarks too. Maybe we could go to Ali first, and then after that we go to Alfred.
Okay, just to make it very brief because we don't have time, I would like to take the chance to thank so much the other two talents beside Muhammad, Yo-Yo and Danny, because what I want to say is very relating to them. Part of the experience of making this film was very much pleasing beside the sad stories behind and beside. So we are not very much interacting with local Indonesians because of these many regulations and things that are forced on us. But there are very few people, a few and a number of interaction with refugees. But for me, there are a lot of people who have just opened their hearts, and they are just contributing with this. In this film, we have enjoyed the process. You can see it in the film as well. There are some very bright parts that Muhammad enjoys being with the friends. Again, the front side is very bright, very happy, very good, but who knows about the behind, Muhammad has a lot of pains in the heart, but then starts to enjoy with and laugh and smile with friends and have fun and talk about very little things, which is making fun for them, only to forget what is the pain inside and what is in the mind when Muhammad finds out that he's not able to go to another city for competition. So the experience was very, very good, as I previously mentioned, especially when we are together. And I'm part of being the director. Alfred knows it very well. We have to sometimes dictate many things, not to change anything, but to kind of save the time, save the energy, and many other things there, technically, or part of how it goes through emotions of the talents. So this is a little bit, but again, how these people have made this, I'm very pleased with. This is very professional, and in that way, though none of us are professional. I'm not professional. Muhammad is not professional, and the other two guys, Yo-Yo and Danny, they're not really professional actors or actresses. But again, they are doing their very pure and professional thing by nature. This was a very good experience for me. And when it was out, we were all very much happy with the result. This is what we really wanted. And we hope that people who watch, they get both sides of the story. The interpretations may be very, very much different on who is watching that, but and that is why we made it really balanced. So to keep this balance based on different interpretations coming from different levels of knowledge of the people in academic level, people in stakeholders level, people in refugee community, people in Indonesian community. So all of these people may have their own understanding, and to keep this balance, I'm sure this film is on the right point. Sorry, I talked a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Ali. Alfred.
I'll make mine very, very quick. One of the best experience is to help empower my friends to, to open path for resettlement, to give them a lot more agency, something that I never thought I would do in my life as a 28-year-old. And I've also done it in the most visually beautiful way. I never thought I would make something very visually beautiful and empowering these people at the same time in the journey. It's breathtaking to be able to do that. It's an honor. It's a privilege to be able to do that. And realizing where I'm coming from, realizing my background, and realizing the regional context in which we are living in, to be able to do that, that is the most beautiful thing you can do in this movement. And I really wish that Indonesians, orang Indonesia, can replicate what I do, because I'm an Indonesian and I can do that. So can all of you. So this is my message to all of you. And do it in the most visually beautiful way, guys. Don't be afraid. Don't just, you can maybe write a beautiful poetry or make a film, or maybe just make some beautiful music. But the most important thing is to empower these people, because at the end of the day, they need the agency as a human being, because they are truly people just like us. They are human beings just like us. So please empower them. And I'm glad I'm able to do. I'm glad that I'm part of this journey and I can do this for them.
Thank you, Alfred. Unfortunately, that's the end of our talk show. I'd like to thank both of our directors, Ali Reza and Alfred, once again for sharing their time with us and to walk us through and making sense of their documentary movies. So both documentaries are available for public screening every Tuesday and Thursday between 6th to 20th of August 2022 in Work Cafe Jakarta at dedicated time schedules. Thank you for your time, everyone, and we hope to see all of you again in another opportunity. Back to Teresa.
Thank you, Mbak Didi. Okay, thank you, Mbak Didi, Pak Alfred, and Pak Ali for giving us great discussion today. I guess Mbak Didi has mentioned all the important points from our discussion today, but I just want to add that I love both movies, and I hope that more people can watch those eye-opening movies, and therefore more people could feel the humanly connection with our refugee brothers and sisters. And back to my role as a host, I would like to close the session by reminding you that Let's Walk My Journey art exhibition will last until the 20th of August 2022. And as Mbak Didi has mentioned, we have other series of events every Tuesday and Thursday. We will have offline movie screening at Work Cafe Jakarta. And then on the 13th, it's on Saturday, we're going to have creative writers talk. To write is to heal, artist talk with some of our artists who are participating in the event. And also book launching Lost in the Calm, written by one of our directors today, Ali Reza Yawari, and also artist meet up. And then on the 14th, as you can see there, we will have artist meet up through Gather Town, and we will have the closing by the 20th of August. And for further information, you can visit our Instagram at RDI UREF. Okay, and last, I would like to thank you all for attending this director's talk, especially those in YouTube. And I hope that you can connect with the film and also the reality better. And looking forward to meeting you on other series of events. See ya.